When Surging Sparks launches in Pokemon TCG Live on Thursday, November 7th, there will be several brand new decks we're testing out. While most of them have a chance to win against a lot of the top decks out there, at least in Japan, nothing's made too big of a splash outside of Ceruledge EX and Archaludon EX. Still, I'm choosing to be an optimist and believe that my mighty Pikachu EX deck will be able to beat off every Charizard player. Your foot jerk reaction to seeing Pikachu EX is to pair it with Magneton. After all, Magneton blows itself and immediately spreads 3 energy to Pikachu, powering it up instantly. And that's honestly not a bad strategy. Pikachu does 300 damage for those 3 energy, but you do have to discard 3 of those energy after using Topaz Bolt, so it's risky. And while Resolute Heart does keep Pikachu alive with 10 hit points remaining if it had full HP before the attack, there are ways around it, including Dusclops, Dusknoir, Frostlass, and Brute Bonnet. That being said, thanks to Gravity Mountain, Pikachu EX is a basic Pokemon that can one-shot Stage 2s like Charizard and Dragapult, making it a threat. For the Magneton build, you can't solely rely on Overvolt Discharge. That's where Joltik and the new Terrapados come in, both accelerating energy from deck. Joltik can put 4 energy into play, though it's limited to just Lightning and Grass. Terrapados can only accelerate to Terra Pokemon, and the energy all has to be of different types, but it can attach all 3 to Pikachu. Plus, it has, more than 30 hit points. The only other benefit to Joltik is that it can evolve into Galvantula EX, though for me that's a negative. Still, Galvantula is a lightning type, so you can also power it up with Magneton and item lock them. You just have to add fighting energy to the deck. Here's an 11th place Pikachu Magneton list I found from Japan. Miraidon EX helps find all your lightning basics, Latios EX gives all your basics free retreat, Crispin helps get energy out of the deck, and Blood Moon Ursaluna is just a great closer. It's completely serviceable and could get some wins when it works. But the Pikachu EX build that's been doing the best in Japan so far is the one paired with Blissey EX. I tried the Blissey combo previously with Galvantula EX and wasn't a fan, but Pikachu gives Blissey a Pokemon that can one-shot Stage 2s. How this works is that Blissey's ability allows you to move a basic energy attached to one of your Pokemon to another one of your Pokemon. So you accelerate energy onto your Chansey and Blissey on the bench with Glass Trumpet, then move it to Pikachu. Glass Trumpet requires you to have a Terra Pokemon to play for it to work, but guess what? Pikachu's a Terra Pokemon! Aside from Pikachu EX, other new cards the deck plays are 1 copy each of Precious Trolley and Gravity Mountain. The deck runs Arven, so you have a great chance of getting Precious Trolley turn 1 and filling your bench to 5. Gravity Mountain, meanwhile, allows Pikachu to one-shot every meaningful Stage 2 Pokemon in Standard. There isn't too much craziness when it comes to the list. Turbo Energize can get energy into play if you go second, and Radiant Greninja helps draw cards while also putting energy into the discard pile for Glass Trumpet. Don't forget that Blissey is also a decent attacker, dealing 180 damage for 3 colorless energy and drawing you up to 6 cards in hand. Because Pikachu needs a Grass, Lightning, and Metal energy to attack, and Blissey moves the energy around to anybody, you can include a lot of backup attackers. What I saw in Japan is people including Darkness energy to take advantage of Monkey Dory, and Water energy for Radiant Greninja and Iron Bundle. The Monkey Dory strategy is interesting because if everything's going right, Pikachu will survive a hit, then you can move 6 damage counters off of it. But as a PTCGL player for nearly 3 years, I never expect things to go right. And finally, the combo that will work for everyone else but not you, Pikachu with Regigigas. Just like Blissey, Regigigas needs a Terra Pokemon to work properly, and Pikachu fits in there perfectly like Cinderella's foot into my mouth. All you have to do is drop an Area 0 with Pikachu in play, thus expanding your bench to 8, and have every Reggie down. Achieve that, and Regigigas can accelerate 3 energy from your discard pile to any one of your Pokemon, including Pikachu. As you can see from the list, Precious Trolley is super important for finding your basics. And Heavy Ball gets the ones trying to hide from you in the prizes. Every list played heavy counts of Irida, so you could find Radiant Greninja, Regice, or Iron Bundle, plus whatever item you need at the time, which caught me a little off guard. Because you can't include Gravity Mountain, there is a copy of Kieran for the 30 damage boost, though you could swap that with Defiance Band if you find yourself playing from behind regularly. Ultimately, this build of Pikachu will be high risk, high reward, and that reward is the smug sense of self-satisfaction you get when pulling off the combo multiple turns in a row. Next up, we have Hydreigon EX, a card that you think is better than it actually is, but is still good enough. For a Darkness and a Colorless, Hydreigon does 200 damage and discards the top 3 cards of your opponent's deck. You're not one-shotting too many meaningful Pokemon, but you are setting up KOs and potentially milling cards your opponent doesn't want to lose. Then there's the Terra attack, Obsidian. While every other Terra Pokemon's second attack uses 3 different types of energy, the Pokemon Company decided to add another pip to Obsidian's cost. So for a Psychic, Darkness, Metal, and Colorless, it does 130 damage to the active, plus 130 to 2 bench Pokemon. This is great for taking multiple prizes against single prize decks, or for cleaning up KOs on high HP Pokemon that were damaged by crashing heads. Unfortunately, Manaphy exists until March, so it has a clear weakness. When it comes to building a Hydreigon list, there's two decisions you have to make. First, how many times do you want to have a Hydreigon use Obsidian? If it's just once, you only need Darkness Energy, 2 Dark Patch, Neo Upper Energy, and Counter Gain. But if you want it to be 2 or more, then you have to put in Psychic and Metal Energy along with Neo Upper and Counter Gain plus a copy of Crispin. The second decision is whether you want the Dusknoir line. Dusknoir allows you to take a knockout against someone like Charizard EX after a crashing heads, or it can just let you activate Counter Gain out of nowhere and use Obsidian when they aren't expecting it. Whichever direction you decide to take Hydreigon, Pidgeot is the best partner, getting you whatever card you want turn after turn. While they haven't seen a ton of play in Japan so far, I would recommend TM's Evolution and De-Evolution. You already run Arven, so they're easy to find. And with Crashing Heads as milling, if you hit some rare candies against another Stage 2 deck, a De-Evolution could just win you the game. Ultimately, I'd say Hydreigon EX will be better than Cinderace EX, and the Raging Bolt matchup will be rougher than a Litten's Tongue. Pretty much your only chance of winning against Raging Bolt comes down to whether or not you can Iono or Roxanne them low, while using math to not take knockouts until you can take 4 or 6 prizes at once. The only reason I didn't include Ceruledge EX earlier is because I already made a full-fledged video on it. I wanted to give Hydreigon the spotlight before I completely overshadow it with the greatest card in Standard. Harkening back to my favorite expanded card, Volcarona V, Ceruledge does 30 base damage plus 20 more for each energy card in your discard pile. Except unlike Volcarona, you don't shuffle the energy back into your deck, you just do more and more damage each turn. Even with the influx of new cards from the second half of Surging Sparks, Ceruledge isn't much different from what I covered several weeks ago. The strategy of getting as many energy into the discard pile as quickly as possible, then hitting for upwards of 400 damage remains the same. And the two core versions, one featuring Legacy Energy and the other Brilliant Blender, are unchanged as well. Legacy Energy is great because it can force your opponent to take 4 knockouts instead of 3 to win the game, while Brilliant Blender discards 5 cards from your deck, boosting Ceruledge damage by 100 instantly. I'm definitely leaning towards the Legacy Energy build, which you can see on screen. Japanese players are now including copies of Pokemon Catcher in their lists, meaning you can use your discard supporters like Carmine and Research every turn, but still have a chance at gusting up a good target. The Fan Rotom might seem a little weird, but it's your Mimikyu counter. If you don't like Fan Rotom, swap it for Canceling Cologne, or keep it and add a Canceling Cologne by removing that second Squawkabilly. Another variant of the Legacy Energy build is adding in a 1/1 line of Palkia V-Star. So long as you don't prize a Palkia, it gives you a quick way to deal a good amount of damage early on in the game, especially against Area 0 decks. Switching to the Brilliant Blender build, it's definitely dropped in popularity in Japan, probably because Legacy Energy is so good. Still, if you want a faster Ceruledge deck that won't extend games, this is what you want to go with. Palkia makes another appearance, meaning you can Brilliant Blender some water energy into the discard pile, then Star Portal it onto Palkia or Radiant Greninja. For added spice, don't forget about Salvatore. Because Ceruledge doesn't have an ability, you can immediately evolve a Charcadet with Salvatore. So if you go second, you can attack with a Ceruledge on turn 1. Just be prepared for it to only work 10% of the time. Other options for Ceruledge are Victini to boost its damage slightly, Drillbur to discard more energy quickly but it has to be fighting, Zamazenta V for more discard power on turn 1, and for the truly crazy, Regidrago V-Star since its V-Star power mills 7 cards and lets you get back any 2 cards from your discard. Just like Ceruledge, Archaludon EX hasn't undergone that many changes since I previously covered it, but out of the few lists seeing success in Japan, they pair Archaludon with either Dialga V-Star or, to everyone's surprise, the Stage 2 Luxray that can put itself into play when you're setting up. Starting with Dialga, the pairing is perfect. When you evolve into Archaludon, you can accelerate 2 Metal Energy from the discard pile to your Metal Pokemon however you want. So if Dialga is the play early, evolve into 2 Archaludon, manually attach for turn, then use Star Chronos for 220. And the following turn, you could be dealing 280 damage with Metal Blast. Otherwise, Archaludon itself does 220 damage for 3 energy while also removing its weakness. You can do more damage by using Relicanth's ability, which allows Archaludon to copy Duraludon's Raging Hammer. This means you deal 80 damage plus 10 more for each damage counter on Archaludon, so letting Archie get heavily damaged is actually a good thing. This first place list from Japan is pretty straightforward. Get energy in the discard pile with Earthen Vessel, Radiant Greninja, Ultra Ball, and Research, then try to get Archaludon and Dialga set up. There's a ton of Gust, plus Jamming Tower to shut off tools. The one interesting card is Scramble Switch, which switches your active with the bench Pokemon and allows you to move as many energy from the old active to the new active. The aspect of choice with Archaludon seems to be either Scramble Switch or Scoop Up Cyclone. Scramble Switch is cute, but Scoop Up Cyclone essentially allows you to heal a damaged Pokemon, get a Fezandipity off the field, or even reuse an Archaludon's energy acceleration if played correctly. And when you're building Archaludon, don't overlook the power of Hero's Cape boosting its HP by 100. The other build of Archaludon seeing success in Japan pairs it with Luxray from Crown Zenith. I'm less jazzed about this one, mostly because whenever I put this Luxray into a deck, I never start it. But if you're lucky, having Luxray in your opening hand of 7 means you can put it directly into your active spot even though it's a stage 2. Then for a single colorless energy, it does 50 damage and grabs any 2 trainers from your deck. There is nothing exotic with this first place Luxray build aside from the Luxray. Scoop Up Cyclone is the ace-spec of choice and you just hope to start the Luxray. Other successful builds of Luxray did go with Prime Catcher and Canceling Cologne or Maximum Belt and Gravity Mountain to I guess one-shot Pidgeot EX. But if you're playing this version, winning depends mightily on that opening hand. For the 5th and final new deck coming in Surging Sparks that has any chance of impacting the meta, we have Milotic EX. Yeah, I'm as Milo ticked off as you are about this one. But this is something that seems to happen every year, just like me buying a new Lopunny plushie because the old one is too stained. The next rotation in March 2025 will take roughly 1,000 F-block cards out of Standard. That means stall decks have so many different ways to beat you off right now, and it's why stall decks always get better the later in the season. Basically, the bigger the card pool, the better stall decks seem to do. Except Milotic isn't hurt as much by rotation as you might think, only losing access to Palkia V-Star, Rotom V, Forest Sealstone, Radiant Greninja, and Irida. Snorlax Stall, however, will be completely removed from the face of the earth in March, and I cannot wait. Anyways, Milotic EX. The best performing list I could find in Japan paired it with fellow annoying cards Noivern EX, Cornerstone Master Ogerpon EX, Gastrodon, and Mimikyu. The strategy is all about picking the right wall Pokemon for the job. Milotic prevents all damage and effective attacks from Terra Pokemon. Noivern can prevent all damage from basic Pokemon, Ogerpon prevents all damage from Pokemon with an ability, and Mimikyu prevents all damage from EX and V Pokemon. Gastrodon meanwhile removes bench stage 2 Pokemon abilities as long as it's on the bench. With all these good immunity effects, you might be wondering what the point of Milotic is. Well, the main one is Dragapult EX. Since it's a stage 2 without an ability, Noivern and Ogerpon are useless, and Mimikyu can still take damage counter pings. But Milotic is immune to both Dragapult's damage and damage counters so long as they don't use Canceling Cologne, a card rotating in March. Milotic's also helpful against Ceruledge EX, Hydreigon EX, and even Zarina EX. Here's a first place Milotic EX list from Japan. Thankfully, it isn't a true stall deck as there's 11 total energy. Milotic does 160 damage and puts them to sleep, giving you an alternate win condition over just stalling them out, which is a good thing as match timers in live are going from 25 minutes to 20 minutes. And with Palkia V-Star, you can easily power up Milotic, Palkia, and Radiant Greninja, taking key knockouts when you need them. There's also a Fighting and Psychic Energy in the deck for Ogerpon and Mimikyu, with Noivern able to attack with one of the 4 Double Turbo Energy. The other potential partners for Milotic EX are any Pokemon who can annoy the crap out of your opponent. This includes Farigiraf EX, which blocks damage from all basic Pokemon EX. The Water Paldean Tauros, which puts up to 2 energy attacks to your opponent's stage 2 Pokemon back into their hand. And Terapagos EX, which can make itself immune to damage from basic non-colorless Pokemon. And don't forget about annoying trainers like Xerosic Machinations, Crushing Hammer, Airy, Misfortune Sisters, and Gravity Mountain, which allows Milotic to 2-shot a Charizard EX rather than 3-shot it. While they've both done next to nothing in Japan, I'll briefly talk about Flygon EX and Slaking EX. For a single fighting energy, Flygon does 130 damage and hits and runs back to the bench, meaning you can promote someone like Mimikyu to potentially wall them. Otherwise, Sonic Peridot is interesting, dealing 100 damage to each of your opponent's Pokemon via an EX. Unfortunately, it's blocked by Manaphy and you'll have to do it successfully 3 or 4 times to win the game. Or if you're lucky, and only face evolution decks once plus a de-evolution. Slaking, meanwhile, can only attack if your opponent has a Pokemon EX or V in play. Since most decks run them, Slaking will almost always be a 340 hit point stage 2 Pokemon that does 280 damage for 2 energy, though you do have to discard 1 energy after using Great Swing. So you can pair it with Double Turbo Energy and use Charon's Care to put it back into your hand if it's damaged. Both of the strongest Flygon EX decks I could find completely ignored Sonic Peridot and just went for the hit and run strategy. You deal that 130 damage with Reversing Storm, then put Klefki, Mimikyu, or Cornerstone Masked Ogerpon in the active, then try to wall them and do it all over again. Because there's so much Gust in Standard right now though, don't expect this strategy to work out all that well. As for Slaking EX, it's the rare deck where Boomerang Energy actually might make sense. Because Slaking can attack for a single energy with counter gain attached, you can discard Boomerang Energy as a result of Great Swing, then it gets reattached right after. Otherwise, it's a fairly standard deck using Terapagos and Blood Moon Ursaluna as backup attackers if they don't have any V or EX Pokemon. If you missed my previous video, both Pikachu EX and Archaludon EX decks will be given out with the Surging Sparks Battle Pass. However, because of the new economy changes, you won't be able to unlock the Archaludon deck until Tier 33. And if you're wondering why a certain spicy Pokemon was missing from this video, it's definitely not because I need to trick you into watching my Road Decks video coming out soon. I would never do such an unscrupulous thing for money. Which new deck will you be playing first when Surging Sparks is out? Let everyone know in the comments.